There is something special about an old Mercedes. Not just the badge, not just the comfort, not just the way these cars still make even an ordinary drive feel a little more expensive. The real magic is deeper than that. It is the feeling that some of these cars were built in a completely different era, a time when Mercedes engineers seemed obsessed with making cars that could outlive almost anything on the road. And that is exactly why certain older Mercedes models still have such a strong reputation today. Because while modern cars often chase screens, complicated electronics, and short-term wow factor, some older Mercedes models earned respect the old-fashioned way by lasting forever, or at least by lasting long enough to make everything around them give up first. In today's video, we are counting down the top 3 cheap Mercedes models with unkillable engines. These are not the newest cars, they are not the flashiest, but if you want an affordable Mercedes with the kind of engine that has a real reputation for durability, these are the models you should know about. Let's get into it. 3. Mercedes-Benz W 210 E-Class. One of the last old-school Mercedes sedans that still feels like it was built with long-term durability in mind. Now, let's be honest, the W 210 is not perfect. These cars can have rust issues, age-related suspension wear, and all the normal old car problems you would expect from a Mercedes of this era. But when people still talk about the W 210 with respect today, they are usually talking about one very important thing: the engine. Because in the right version, this car has exactly what budget buyers want: an engine with a reputation for taking huge mileage, regular use, and years of ownership without turning into a disaster. That is what makes the W 210 such an appealing cheap Mercedes. It still looks like a proper Mercedes. It still has that comfortable, substantial feel on the road, and most importantly, it comes from a time when Mercedes was still building cars with a much stronger mechanical foundation than many people expect today. The best thing about the W 210 is that it still feels like a real executive sedan. Even at budget car money, you sit low, the visibility is excellent, the ride is calm, and the whole experience feels mature in a way many newer cheap cars simply do not. This is not a car trying to impress you with gimmicks. It is a car designed to do its job every single day. And that matters, because when you are looking for a cheap car with an unkillable engine, you are not just looking for something that can survive. You are looking for something worth keeping alive. The W 210 offers that combination. It gives you old-school Mercedes presence, comfort, and road manners, plus an engine setup that can be genuinely tough when properly maintained. That is why it earns the number 3 spot. It may not be the most modern Mercedes you can buy for the money, but if you want affordable entry into the world of durable Mercedes ownership, the W 210 is still one of the smartest places to start. 2. Mercedes-Benz W 202. One of the most underrated cheap Mercedes models you can still find. This car often gets overlooked because it sits below the bigger E-Class in the lineup, but that is exactly what makes it so interesting. The W 202 gives you a lot of the same old Mercedes engineering mindset in a smaller, simpler, and often cheaper package. And when it comes to long-lasting engines, that is a very good thing. The W 202 came from an era when Mercedes still built compact sedans with real substance. It does not feel flimsy. It does not feel disposable. It feels like a proper Mercedes, just in a more manageable size. And for buyers who want durability without the size or image of a larger executive car, that makes it a very appealing option. But the real story, again, is under the hood. In the right configuration, the W 202 is known for having engines that can take serious mileage and keep going with basic care. That is exactly the kind of reputation you want when buying an older Mercedes on a budget. Not a car that only works when everything is perfect, but a car that keeps showing up even after years of use. And that reliability reputation changes everything. Because once a car earns a name for having a durable engine, it becomes much more than just an old, used luxury sedan. It becomes a smart buy. It becomes the kind of car people recommend to friends. It becomes the type of car owners hang on to, because replacing it with something newer often means getting something less solid. The W 202 also has another big advantage: simplicity. Compared with many later luxury cars, it feels refreshingly straightforward. That is part of why these cars are still respected. They come from a time before Mercedes started piling on too much complexity. And for long-term ownership, that is a major plus. So if you want a cheap Mercedes with real old-school character and one of the strongest durability reputations in the brand's more affordable lineup, the W 202 absolutely deserves its place near the top. 1. Mercedes-Benz W 124. Honestly, this one almost feels inevitable, because when people talk about cheap Mercedes models with unkillable engines, the W 124 is one of the first names that always comes up. It has become legendary for a reason. This is the car that helped build the myth of Mercedes durability. The car that made people believe a Mercedes could go on forever if you gave it even halfway decent care. And the truth is, that reputation did not come from nowhere. The W124 was built in a very different era, a time when Mercedes engineering had an almost obsessive focus on solidity, longevity, and overbuilt mechanical quality. That is why these cars still have such a loyal following today. They are not just loved because they are old. They are loved because they earned their status. And when it comes to engines, the W124 is exactly what this list is about. In the right version, this is the kind of car people trust to take huge mileage without drama. The engines in these cars are known for being tough, durable, and capable of surviving long-term use far better than many people expect from an older luxury vehicle. That is why the W124 still gets mentioned again and again whenever someone asks which old Mercedes is actually worth buying. But what really makes this car special is that it offers more than just a durable engine. It also has timeless styling, excellent visibility, real comfort, and that unmistakable old-school Mercedes feeling that modern cars simply cannot copy. Everything about the W124 feels serious. The doors close with weight. The cabin feels purposeful. The whole car has a sense of quality that reminds you this was built before cost-cutting and trend-chasing took over the industry. And that is why it takes number one. Because if you want the ultimate affordable Mercedes with a true unkillable engine, reputation, this is the car that defines the category. It is not just a good, cheap Mercedes. It is one of the most respected long-term ownership cars the brand ever made. The W124 is the model that turned Mercedes durability into a legend. And even today, it still deserves that title. Conclusion. So in the end, if you want a cheap Mercedes with a truly tough engine, these are some of the best places to look. The W210 gives you old-school comfort and durability for very reasonable money. The W202 proves you do not need a big Mercedes to get that classic, long-lasting engineering. And the W124 remains the gold standard, the car that still defines what people mean when they talk about a truly bulletproof Mercedes. What makes these cars special is not just that they are old. It is that they come from a time when Mercedes built cars with a completely different mindset. They were made to last, made to be driven for years, and made to earn loyalty through the ownership experience. Of course, buying one today still requires common sense. A good example can be a brilliant long-term car. A neglected one can still become an expensive mistake. But if you buy carefully, these models can give you something very rare in today's market, an affordable Mercedes that still feels solid, dependable, and worth owning. And that is exactly why cars like these still matter. Now I want to know what you think. Which one would you trust the most? And is there another cheap Mercedes with a legendary engine that should have made this list? Drop it in the comments. If you liked this video, subscribe to AutoScope for more content on old-school luxury cars, reliable engines, and the best used German cars still worth buying today.